What's up, y'all? Thank you for clicking To The Brim podcast. I'm excited that you chose to listen to this episode. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow us on Spotify.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm good, man.
Wish I had headphones for you, but
Oh, you're good.
this is, if you guys invest in the pod, you guys give headphones for the guests. If you believe in the vision, just sow a seed. We'll send you some brewed coffee, and the Lord is gonna. No, I'm kidding. Like those old commercials.
Dude, so
cringy. Yeah, for 50 cents. No, 99.99. I'll send you some holy water that is gonna help you. Lord, forgive them.
Dude.
So, what's up? Welcome to The Brim. I am your host, Moises de Rivera, and today's guest is dear to my heart. He's not only a friend, a mentor, but he actually was my college professor, believe it or not. So, hopefully he's nice to me today and doesn't pull out the transcripts. I don't know if he came with some transcripts or not, but hopefully he doesn't pull them out because we want you to know that we do things in excellence here. Before Christ, it was a different story. But here we have my college professor, which I'll let him introduce himself. Introduce yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Brett Gilchrist. I'm a teacher down at Independence Community College here in Southeast Kansas. And I think it's been 6-7 years since I had Moises as a student. So we had kind of not seen each other for 4 or 5 years, and about a month ago finally caught back up and gotta have some really good conversations already.
Yes. Like he said, he was one of my college professors, and I don't know about you guys listening to this. You always encounter in life. You encounter people who influence you or impact your life in such a major way, and you almost. I would believe there was almost like an angel encounter. I was like, man, I wish I could find where he's at, write him a letter. And one day after service, I walk and I see him, and I'm like, hey, no way. Yeah. He's here, and talking to him, and I was like, hey, I need you on the pod. I need to have a conversation with you because I believe you're going to speak wisdom, and it's going to help people who are interested in growing in leadership or in life. And so thank you for being here.
Yeah, man, happy.
I want to give you your flowers now as we're here. You have impacted my life great in a major way, so I'm thankful for you. Genuine, real person. He was never the type of professor that was coming after you. He was the professor that was trying to lead you to become a man or a successful person, and besides of the game of football, he was always trying to get me in the right classes, trying to graduate. So I'm for real grateful for you, and I'm interested in this conversation because it's a different place in life now. I had you as a professor, and I could only imagine as a man, the kind of man you are, as a father, the kind of father you are. So I'm interested in digging into that person as well as digging into the professor and how you got to become a professor. So I'm interested in just having a good conversation with you, and I believe those watching and listening will be able to be impacted by that. So
yeah, I hope so.
So with that being said, I want to remind everyone this is To The Brim. We believe here that excellence produces a foundation where failure and success are equal. The aim is to live a life with intentionality and not mediocrity. We desire to live a life that it's full with heart. We want to be the best we can with our heart. We want to apply our heart to everything we do. And the reason for that is because I believe that if your heart is in it, it's going to be done right. Yeah. And if your heart is not in it, you're just going to be like, it is what it is. So the first question I want to have for you is who are you? Who is Gilchrist? Who are you?
Yeah, man. I'll be real honest with everyone. So Moises sent me these questions yesterday, and you'd think I'd have a real good answer to that question. No, I don't. The reality for me is I'm a guy just trying to live, and I to Moises' point, I try to do things to the best that I can with the knowledge that I have at a time, and I hope it's the right thing, right? I don't think there's any magic recipe to life. I think what we got to do is trust that when we make a decision, we're making the best decision we can in that moment.
That's good.
And for me, I try to do that as a teacher. I try to do that as a husband, as a father. So I could list off all these roles for you, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm a person that's just trying to do the best I can do to make this the best place that it can possibly be. And hopefully that's enough.
And I love that answer, because if you have the privilege to meet him as a person, you could tell he's the type of individual that tries to do the best with what you have. Like you're not the type of person that's pretending to be something you're not. You're not the person that to think you have the answers to everything, and you could see that genuineness in you. Like you're like, hey, if Amal gets it done, Amal gets it done. I'm not here to give you, like you said, like the answers to life. But I love that, and I think that's what stood out to me when I was a college student. It was that I could see that in you. I could see as a young man, I was able to see that you genuinely cared, and you were just genuinely trying to help out. It wasn't like this if you do this, that, the third, it'll be good. You was always asking questions that made me question things. Like,
well, and I think, man, it's such a two-way relationship. The thing that I always appreciated about you was the fact that you came back with it, right? I think it's real hard to be a leader in any capacity, and whoever it is that you're working with isn't having it. But the reality with you was that you were equally as invested in the conversations and the dialogue as I was. And to me, that's when change can happen, right?
That's good.
And so I'll never forget, man, you and I sitting in the hallway outside of AC 113, because there was a teacher in the room before our class. And it was pretty early on. I think at that point, maybe we had already had one class together, but we ended up having, I think, 3 classes together in your time at ICC. And we're just kind of shooting the breeze. And I remember you telling me that the high school you went to, as long as you won football games, academics didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, that was the culture. And I think for myself, I kind of approach it the opposite way. This isn't about how good of an athlete you are. This isn't about how smart you are. This isn't about how good or bad of a person you are by some societal definition. This is about here and now, are you working or not? Right? That to me is that simple. If you're working with me, I'm working with you. Like, I'm on board to help whoever, whenever, but it's got to be that two-way. And I think too often we've gotten to a place where we just expect, well, somebody will do it. Like, somebody will catch us. Somebody will, reach out to us. Somebody, man, the reality is you got to make that effort. And if you don't make that effort, life is just hard. Life is real hard.
So when was it for you? At what age, or when was like the light switch in your head that was like, you need to apply yourself to everything you do? Like, it's not going to change unless you work at it. It's not going to change unless you apply yourself and become intentional at it. When was it like at a young age? And
so, man, this is a weird answer. There's a part of me that's always been that way. Like, I was the dude, I thought I had a future in baseball. That's really where I thought my career was going to go. So I was the dude in high school trying to hit up friends like, hey, let's get in some extra work. Let's get after this. And I had one buddy that was all in. And so him and I, man, we'd go down into the basement of this antique store that his uncle owned, and we'd work out nonstop every day. It didn't matter how much snow was on the ground. We'd find a way.
Wow.
Well, then he starts getting busy with some other things that kind of his life was taking him in the direction of. And so I'm like, man, like, what am I going to do? So I'm the cat literally at my elementary school I went to as a kid with a duffel bag of baseballs thrown into a fence. And then I got to go pick up all the balls. And then I got to load them back up. We walk down another 50 feet and I'm doing it again. So to some extent, I think I've always had that about me. But the thing that always surprises me is I think sometimes it's easy to think, man, how has that person not figured it out? Right? We look at people's lives and we're like, man, like, think about all the bad things that have happened to that person. Like, how has that light bulb not clicked for them? I'm a 2-time suicide survivor.
Wow.
The first time I attempted to take my life, I think you would think, like, how did I not figure it out after that? You know, I think it'd be real easy. But man, I remember I had that attempt. I had some really strong feelings. I always tell the story in one of the classes that I teach. I'm sitting there, and I swear to you, God puts my mom's picture,
wow,
her face in this mirror that I'm looking at from across the room. And it was like, okay, I can't do this. I can't do this to her. Well, that was the problem, is I was doing it for her.
Wow. And
it wasn't about me. So things went well for a little bit. And I to the outside world, the life was good. And I'll never forget on the second attempt, man, it's like, man, I got to do stuff for me, and I think we sometimes use that word selfishness in such a negative way.
Yeah.
But the reality is, man, selfishness is also, if I don't handle my business, I can't help other people handle theirs.
Come on, that's real.
I got to take care of myself first and foremost. Yeah. And it took me a while to realize that there was it was probably the first 18, 19 years of my life, I was doing things for other people.
Wow.
And that took a toll on my mental health and my sanity. And it wasn't until that I finally made that commitment to taking care of myself first that I could then really start to be of service to others. So I'd say about age 19, age 20, somewhere in there.
Wow. So, man, that's so good. My mind is like, I got like 500 questions I want to ask you. 2-time suicide survivor. And it wasn't until you said you became, essentially, you could say selfish, and you're like, hey, I can't help you unless I help myself. My wife says these things. She says, it's not self-care, it's soul care. She's like, I have to care for myself. I have to take care of myself, because if the only way I can help other people is if I am in a place to help other people. So to you, what on the second time, what was it that clicked? Obviously, you said that you were in a place where you're like, I need to help myself. But what brought you there? Like, what was like the blinking headlight? What was like, hey, I need to take care of me? Yeah.
So the first attempt, there's this image, right? And like I said, it was all about mom at that point. The second time, bro. So I'm in the basement. It was my house. It's a 2-story house with a basement. I go down into the basement, and I don't know, why I chose the basement. That part don't really matter, honestly. But my dog comes down, bro. And my dog comes down and lays on my lap. And for me, it was this idea that if my dog is willing to come to my aid in my deepest moment of need, then I gotta be able to take care of myself. Like, how am I relying on a pet to save my life right now? But the reality is she did. I don't know what would have gone different if that dog hadn't managed to come find me.
Man's best friend, man. That's what. And
so, for me, that's what it was. It was, man, like, I can't be waiting for somebody else to save me.
Wow.
I gotta save me. And I really believe, God put that dog down there, because I think there's nothing else that explains it. Like, it wasn't like she was looking for food. It wasn't like she was checking on me. She was wondering where I was, and I think that's on him to put her in that room at that time. And it was really that moment where I said, man, I can't rely on other people to save me. I got to be able to take care of myself.
I love that, because, oh my gosh, bro, I feel pumped. I'm not even playing. Like, I'm like, let's go play a game. Let's go.
Yeah.
Man, I love that, because it brings hope to people. It brings hope to people, because a lot of times, one, nobody likes to talk about suicide. Two, mental health it has kind of like that look to it, like, oh, I don't want to. That's a touchy subject. But here to the brim, we want to talk about everything. We want to talk about that. And I love that you brought that up yourself. What would you encourage people who are battling with that? How would you encourage them right now to say, hey, it's up to you? Because a lot of the times, speaking for myself as well, and experiences, I always did things for people, right? And it wasn't until I came to that realization, like, you could sit down and and blame. My story was I blamed people. Like, you don't know where I come from. You know, that basic. You know what I've been through. You know the trauma that I've been through. And it was always like this, right? And it wasn't until I sat down and I realized, hold up, I have control.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
What would you encourage somebody who right now is listening and watching this? How would you encourage them to take charge of their life?
Man, it's tough, but to me, the best thing you can do is make an intentional effort to start believing in yourself.
Wow.
It may be small things, right? For me, it was that realization of, like I said, to the outside world, I think everybody thought my life was peaches and cream. You know, it wasn't until that moment where I started realizing, like, man, I've got all these talents that I've never allowed myself to see. I just thought it was, man, it's just who I am.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it wasn't until I started to really make a concerted effort to appreciate all these gifts that I had been given, all these talents, all these things that for me I either took for granted or I saw them in a negative way. When I started really making a concerted effort to realize that, no, man, there's some power to this, there's some conviction behind this. And it's funny because I didn't even realize this until you asked that question. I had a conversation with a dude yesterday. The things that I always saw as a knock against me, kind of like you and I talked about before.
Yeah.
Those are the things that have ended up being some of my greatest assets, right? The anxiety, the depression that I struggled with growing up, I started realizing how much that's also to my benefit. Because if I can really focus on, okay, I've got these racing thoughts, well, don't try to repress them. Don't try to hide from them. Use that to your advantage. And when I started doing that, man, that was a game changer. It was a game changer because now it's, again, like you said, it's I can control this. There's something I can do to help myself. I don't gotta wait on something else to happen.
And I think a lot of people, dude, I love this. I think a lot of people think that controlling them is repressing them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they like, I gotta control them. Let me repress them. No. Like, you know, they try to hide it. And in reality, controlling them is like, hey, there's some things that are in my control, some things that are not.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna ride this roller coaster. That's how I like to talk to people about it. Is because I experience anxiety and when I talk to people about it, I go, bro, just ride the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Hey, you will live to tell about it, but just ride the roller coaster. It may be tough, it may suck, but ride that roller coaster and recognize you have that control.
Yeah.
To ride it out, feel it. I'm a feeler, so one of the things I didn't have the emotional intelligence to know back then was that if you hold it all in, it's worse.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew there was power in tears, and I didn't know that because, you know, I'm coming from Miami where hey, suck it up, buttercup, like, you know, you gotta hide, you can't cry. And it's not till you can't tell yourself don't cry when your body wants to cry. When your body's like, your emotional meter is like, you gotta go. And it wasn't until I went to people and I was like, I cannot control it, like I'm just crying. Man. And it wasn't until I heard neuroscientists and psychologists say yeah, that's your body telling you need to filter all that out.
Yeah.
You can't hold it anymore in.
Well, I think, you know, two things I take away from that. You know, one, we think of crying always in terms of sadness. But, man, sometimes when you get real angry, when you get real frustrated, when you get real confused, right, tears don't come about just because of one emotional experience. And I think, unfortunately, you know, we don't, as men in particular, right, we're not supposed to be sad because that's weakness. But it's okay socially. It's socially acceptable for us to be angry. Well, if that's the case, then why can't I cry from that anger?
Whoa.
Right? It's okay for me to throw a punch at somebody, to try to cuss somebody out when I'm angry. Well, why can't I cry when I'm angry? Right? That, I think that's the problem, is we've so closely linked tears to sadness and sadness to weakness that we've created this real kind of nasty bias about that behavior. And the reality, man, tears are no different from screaming at somebody, cussing at somebody,
punching.
Yeah,
that's real.
It's just an emotional expression. But the other thing to me that you brought up is, you know, for me, one of the coolest things about my counseling program that I went through to become a licensed counselor was I had to go to counseling. And at first, when they made me do it, I'm like, man, this is the weirdest thing. Like, why are they making me go to counseling? But I think, like your wife said, man, it's if you don't take care of your own soul, there ain't no way you can impact somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And so about 2 or 3 sessions in, I'm catching myself just letting the floodgates open to this dude. And I'll never forget really thinking to myself after I'd have my sessions with him, like, man, like I don't really like how this went down or that went down. But it wasn't, I don't like what I said. It was, I don't like how he responded. And it was immediately then, man, I can use this. I can use this counseling session not only to air my baggage, but I can use it to start to learn how do I want to serve others. Wow. And so I immediately started using this guy to my advantage, not only because, hey, man, if you want to listen to me for an hour, cool. I'll let it fly. But also it was, man, I can see like this is what I don't appreciate about his interactions with me, and this is how I'm going to try to be better when I help other people. And I think like you and I have talked about a little bit, you know, this is a people business, right? Life is not about lone survivor. You got to figure it out. This is, man, you got to take care of yourself, but you got to also be able to surround yourself with people that are going to cultivate that journey in the right way. You're going to surround yourself with people that may need you, and so you got to be able to help cultivate their journey in the right way. And I started realizing in that process that there's a certain way I want to go about that. And even though it came through a negative experience, a lot of positivity came out of it. But I think we're so quick to just drown in negativity. And we got to be willing to make that conscious effort to see, man, what's the positive? It may be the smallest dang thing in the world, and it may be the finest string in life that you're holding on to. But hold on to that. Why not?
Why not?
Like, why not?
That's so good because obviously, you know, I'm a pastor, so it reminds me of when the Gospels talks about all you need is a mustard-sized seed faith. So when you say maybe you might get that one little thing, but that's the one little thing God also tells us that one little thing, it's the one thing that could bring out the greatest things you could ever imagine. So I love how you could get something from a negative place. Man, there's so much wisdom in that. So whew, man, I'm pumped. I think it's the caffeine in you. It's like, if you ever want to have black coffee, have it with Gilchrist. You will feel it. It's like a commercial. So obviously you played baseball. What was your childhood like? What was it like? Because when I saw you as a professor, obviously my mind is like, this guy had it figured out this whole time. Because in my head, I never been to college. Nobody in my family ever been to college. So when I hear professor, I'm like, perfecter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, he's a perfect individual, doesn't have no flaws, has it all put together. But as I see you here sitting down, I'm like, wow, I'm get to meet the man behind the title. And what I love about it is that you're everything I thought you would be. Like, you're the realest, genuine, most vulnerable person that I've been speaking with. And what was your childhood like? Because I believe that had to play a big role on who you are.
So I can tell you this, man. I grew up in a family that genuinely cared. We tried. We worked hard. We had our baggage, man, just like any other family.
Yeah.
I think the difference between my family and maybe some others is we didn't exactly hide ours. You know what I mean? I think we were pretty genuine people. And I think I learned from a very young age that there's a lot of value in just being you. You know, that I know that's a little counterintuitive to what I talked about with some of my depression and anxiety, but man, that was a lot of my own projection and my own kind of way of processing things. That wasn't my family. So I grew up 2-parent household. My dad was a high school grad, no college life, went into the military, did his time, got out. He came from one of the most blue collar families you could come from. I think he is one of 9 siblings. I believe his mom never worked. His dad was a self-made plumber.
Wow.
And they lived in a very small house, but they just found ways, right? They matriculated it. And so growing up, that's kind of who my dad was. My dad worked the night shift, so my dad wasn't, always around, but when he could be around, he was around. My mom was sort of a college grad. She kind of had like the equivalent of like an associate's degree. And for my mom, she was the one that very much it's about education, right? Like you got to get this paper because of what this paper could translate into moving forward. And I wouldn't say she ever pressured us to like go to college, but it was, you got to handle business in the classroom. Like you got to graduate high school. And so I had 5 older siblings. One of them passed away when she was very young. But my oldest sister, still to this day, I tease her a little bit, man. She was the perfect child. Like to me, she was. I don't know that that's what my parents would say. I definitely don't think that's what she would say. But like, as she was 14 years older than me. So I literally had friends that thought she was my mom, thought it was a teen pregnancy. She was, or seemed to have, such a perfect life because, I remember watching her go off to prom in a limo, all dressed up to the nines, and I'm this little kid like, man, this is wild.
This
is
so
cool. Yeah. She went to college. She got a college degree. She ended up really having some really high-paying jobs and has a beautiful husband, a beautiful family of 3 kids. My next oldest sister that's still living has had some mental health struggles, has had some challenges in her life that have really kind of kept her from fulfilling her full potential. And then the closest sibling to me is my brother. And man, I tell stories all the time. My brother was the wild child. My brother was the one that if you told him don't do it, he was going to go do it.
It's like, that means do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was because I had such a diverse experience amongst those siblings. I think that's honestly why I was so kind of self-motivated in a lot of ways, because we were getting pushed and pulled in so many different directions as a family that I just never felt like, I needed to have somebody try to do it for me. I always felt like I could find ways to do it for myself. And I think it was out of that family system that I really started to learn the value of hard work. We didn't have a lot, but what we did have was earned. And I think there was a lot of appreciation for that. I remember my mom, I was like 7th or 8th grade, and I'm the typical punk little middle schooler that I want mom to buy me all the brand name clothes, brand name shoes, and that sort of thing. And my mom wanted to do that for me, but it wasn't that easy for us. And so I'll never forget, we drive down, her parents lived in Kansas City. We drive down to a what do they call them nowadays? At the time, they were called discount malls. And we drive down to this discount mall while we're visiting my grandparents, basically so my mom can give me what I'm wanting in a way that works for our family. And still to this day, I appreciate that so much, because I think to some extent, that's what being a parent is about. You got to check and balance your kid, but you also got to try to be there for your kid.
Make a way.
And my mom whether it was right or wrong. Like, I probably shouldn't have had that value system, right?
Yeah.
Like, I shouldn't have cared. But my mom saw how important it was to me and said, you know, I'm going to try to make this happen in a way that works for our family. And to me, that's parenthood, man. You gotta try to find a way as much as you possibly can, but you also gotta try to look out for your kid and your family as a whole.
It's crazy when I hear you talking about your mom and your dad. Like, I see both of them in you. Like,
oh yeah, man.
I see like the hard worker that we were talking before we started filming, and you were like, yeah, I work at the high school here in Independence and college, and I'm like, bro, he's a hard worker for real. Like, right? And then and that's what led me to ask you this question. And then you start mentioning your mom, and I see the genuine care and attention to detail.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, those are both of his parents in him. Like, those values you were talking about that were instilled in you. So I want to point that out. Like, you have both your mom and your dad, because you're like, I work here, I work there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, when do you sleep? And I'm like, he probably doesn't. He's probably a robot, and that's why I have him here. And then you mentioned like the attention to detail your mom had for stuff like taking you out to buy you stuff.
Yeah,
and I just know, as a student, a former student, is how much you've genuinely cared for the students and getting them to pay attention in class and get them to graduate, because that's what they need to, that you were trying to get them to care. And I can see that that's your mom in you. That's amazing.
Yeah, man. I think the biggest thing I've learned, and fortunately for me, I learned it before I had kids.
Wow.
And so I've been able to make some adjustments, and I'm still not perfect at it, don't get me wrong, but I've made some adjustments in my life to try to do things a little differently. But the one thing it took me a while to learn as a kid is, you know, what is dad doing? You know, like, I took so much of my interactions with him for granted for such a long time. And I'll never forget, I bought my first house. I'm 19 years old. I am so far in over my head. And yet here this dude is, right? Toilet needs fixed. This dude's here, right? I'm trying to mess around with doing some things to fix up the place. Here this dude is. Like, I think for a long time, I didn't recognize that he was always there. It just wasn't in the same way that my mom was there.
Wow.
And so by trying to compare the two together, I didn't see all the value that both of them were given to me.
Wow.
And so now with my kids, you know, like I said, I don't do as good a job as I probably should, but I try to find a balance between making sure that I'm, you know, bringing home some money, that I'm making sure the house is taken care of, that all these ancillary things are in place, but also still finding ways to, you know, go to a basketball game, a volleyball game, you know, pick them up from school if I'm available to pick them up. You know, I think those small little things, they may not appreciate it now, but I hope, much like I did, they'll kind of learn to appreciate that
I think
as they get older.
You hit something else. I think it's beautiful about that. Like, when you reflect back.
Yeah, man.
And I think it's freeing when you can be like, man, I didn't see the value then, but now that I have kids, I'm married, I see that. I see the value,
Yeah,
and I think it's real how you could step back. It's almost like I call it like a step back. Like, you know, you could step back and go, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. Man, why didn't I see that when it was happening? Because I could relate to it as like your parents are helping you out, and you're just like, yeah, like,
Yeah,
cool.
that's what they do,
That's
right?
what they're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
And then now where you get older and you're like, wow, that's amazing.
Well, don't you think, man, there's a deal in psychology called relative deprivation. And basically the way relative deprivation works is we are trained very early in our lives to have what we call an upward social comparison, which means we compare ourselves to the Joneses, right?
Come on.
We look at the pro athlete, got all the money, all the babes, and we want that life. But I think as you get older, you start realizing, bro, man, look at that family. Look at what they're struggling with.
Wow.
Like, I'm sitting here complaining about my dad having to work nights. Bro, my dad had a job. My dad was taking care of, like, what about the family that didn't have that? You know, like, I think sometimes we get so caught up in trying to look ahead and aspirationally looking at what these wealthier people have, or these, kind of star people have. But man, I've grown to really appreciate, when I go into a home, when I was working as a truancy officer, and I'd go into a home and I'm like, bro, we're sitting here complaining about this kid not coming to school. Look at what the life this kid's living. Like, this kid's just trying to survive. Like, this ain't about coming to school now. I got to find a way to help this kid survive. Dude, come on, man.
I get teary because, sheesh, dude. Come on, cuz. we gangsters out here. Dang, man. It's because, dude, it makes sense why I was attracted to you, bro, as a kid. Because you saw that in me. Because you saw that I'm just trying to figure it out, man.
Yeah, dude.
And now it's like the step back. I'm stepping back and I'm like, crap, he really, really did care. And it's because, like you said, I was that kid like, yo, I'm going to make it to the league. Yep. And then you're like, how many Puerto Ricans that are 6'1", 300 pounds are in the league? And you're like, I don't know, right? It's like, I don't know. But hearing you say that, I just see your heart, bro. It's like you have the heart of David from the scriptures. Yeah. It's like you genuinely are invested in souls. Like, you genuinely are like, forget this kid not going to school. He's just trying to survive. How could we get him to survive? And it makes me emotional because, dude, that's like a gift. Like, God has given you this gift to see purpose in pain.
I appreciate that, man.
You have a gift to like see purpose in pain. And I see it from the beginning of our conversation, like 2-time suicide survivor. What is the string I could hold? If I could just hold that string, I'm going to hold that string and I'm going to find purpose in that pain. Yeah. I'm going to find purpose in that string. And it just inflates my heart as you were describing, because I could imagine you going into that home in truancy and then you see the circumstance and everybody's focused in the school. Well, you're in trouble. You got to go to school. Yeah. And you're like, freak the school, bro. Yeah, man. How could I help you? Yeah. How could I help you, human? Like, right? Like, and it just inflates my heart with so much compassion, because I can see your heart in that. And it just reminds me of like, whoa, this man, God sent you in my life when I was young and dumb, because he's like, you're going to see through this persona, this football player. You're going to see through it. And it makes sense. It makes sense. I'm getting like healing as we talk.
Dude,
like,
I'm telling you, man, one of the best experiences of my life in terms of trying to do the right thing was an experience of failure. So I had this kid, I was running a before and after school program. This kid was in 3rd or 4th grade at the time, something like that. And I didn't really have to interact with him a whole lot, because he wasn't somebody that came a lot to our stuff. But when I would interact with him, like, you could see, he was a knucklehead a little bit. He liked to kind of get things riled up. He liked, to get some of that negative attention that kind of fueled it. And I didn't really think much of it, because, again, I didn't have to really work with him. So I take this job, and I'm working at a middle school. I'm in a different city, in a different state. Now, granted, they're 15 minutes apart. There's a river between them. But still, you think about how wild this is. Same kid shows up.
Wow.
Same kid. He's now 7th grade. And I remember my job at that time was, I was like what they call a behavioral interventionist. So my job is, hey, man, when a kid gets kicked out of class, we're sending them to you. We want you to try to figure out, how can we get this kid to matriculate through the process without constantly causing problems.